So, what I see often that men are getting wrong about relationships today is using old tools for modern relationships. So, they're using tools that maybe have worked for, generations of men in the past. They don't work for modern relationships.
83% of Americans identify as not very happy, which can hold you back and negatively affect your relationships and your business. On this podcast, we discuss the proven steps to happiness so you can restore balance and rekindle your joy.
Welcome to another episode of How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. We're talking about relationships today. I think everyone is going to get some amazing advice from our guest, Kristal. How are you today, Kristal?
I am well. Thank you for asking. And thanks for having me here. It's a good day.
Oh, you're so welcome. So, what are men getting wrong about relationships today?
Well, what I see often that men are getting wrong about relationships today is using old tools for modern relationships. So they're using tools that maybe have worked for, generations of men in the past. They don't work for modern relationships. And that's what I see often is the struggle of men saying, like, I feel like I'm doing everything I was supposed to do. And why isn't my wife happy? Or why isn't my relationship working out? So that's why I wrote my book.
So, tell us about these old tools. What are the old tools?
So traditionally, men have been taught, the kind of ways to be a man in a relationship is you be the protector, you be the provider, and, be the procreator. These are ways to prove your masculinity as men in relationship. These are what women want, right? They want protector, provider, and they eventually want to have babies. So, give them that. And, it's not wrong, right? These are things that are still kind of pillars of masculinity. There are lots of women that still like swoon when they hear like this guy wants to be a protector provider and he wants to, help me raise my babies. But I think that's the key difference is, the world has changed, women have changed, the roles of relationships have changed, and these masculine roles in relationships just haven't been updated to reflect what the modern woman wants from a modern man in a modern relationship. So that's really what I speak to in my book and in the work I do. It's like, how do you be a protector in your relationship now, right? Is it just being like going to the gym and working out a lot? Or is it something different? And how do you be a provider in the relationship now? Is it just financial or is there something else? And same thing, is procreation enough or is there something more when it comes to being successful as a man in a relationship these days?
So, what are the answers to all those?
The answer is yes and, right? It's like the expansion of all of these roles. So like, for example, in my book, I talk about, being a protector. In the past, it was about, being the physically strongest man. But now, like, what are the risks to a relationship, right? So in the past, it was literally maybe a wolf would come by or the neighboring tribe would come by and steal your wife and children. And that was the biggest threat to the safety of your family. But now it might be work might be the biggest threat.
Mm.
It might be, a Facebook or a phone addiction. It might be a porn addiction. It might be something that you're not even aware that you need to be protecting your relationship from, but that's really what your relationship needs when it comes to protection now. Like, are you protecting it from the actual threats of, emotional affairs, emotional decay in the relationship, of drifting apart, of not spending enough quality time together? Like, those are really the things that are going to take your relationship down. It's not going to be a wolf at the door,
I love it. I love where you're going with this. So our brain's been around for 6 million years, and so many of the things that helped us survive back in the tribes, we still have today, and they're just destroying us. Like anger and fear, the two most prevalent emotions that we feel today. Like we don't need those anymore because they were for us to run from the lions and the tigers. And
Yeah.
so, so what does the modern woman want today in a relationship?
So what I hear from all women, a lot of women, is they just want partners, right? And so having somebody that they can build a life with that's an equal and present partner is the biggest change. So like I talked about these three P's: protector, provider, procreator. Can you be a partner, right? And what does that mean? What does it mean to actually build a partnership? Where you're equally strong. And this is the title of my book, right? Is strong women need strong men. And
Mm.
it's not that, well, it's the era of the strong woman. So the strong man is like passe. Sorry, guys, here's your pink slip. But really, how do you inhabit your strength as a man and find a strong woman and be her partner? Right? Because that's what I'm hearing from a lot of strong women. They're like, I love my strength, but I wish I had a strong man by my side to build a freaking power future with, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so that's really what I'm passionate about and what I wanted to speak to in my work.
Yeah, my partner talks a lot about us being a we, um,
Totally.
which is just another word, I think, for partner, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I had 2 marriages that didn't work out, and man, when I look back, it did not feel like a we, and it did not feel like a partnership. It felt like 2 broken people trying to prove their worth to each other in the world, and it led to a lot of conflict.
Yeah. And that's honestly kind of where I wrote this book for men, and I like speaking to men because one of the things that I do want to also make clear it's not that like all women are healthy and all women are like magically good at relationships. And so, speaking to men is like speaking to that kind of like the urge to be a leader, right? And so, if you want to know, like, for men, feeling like I can go into my relationship and I can provide leadership as well, right? It's that masculine quality of like, I might not bring in the highest paycheck, which, that's okay now because what I provide is strength and leadership and real partnership because I also know what to look for in a partner, in a healthy woman who can build this alongside me, who will work with me, not against me, right? And so, yeah.
What led you here?
Um, Personally, my story as well. I grew up with parents who didn't have a great relationship, and they were kind of they struggled as a partnership. They were great parents to me, but as a partnership, they just didn't quite work out. And so when I went out into the world, I was very aware that I didn't have like good skills for a relationship. So I just avoided getting into relationships. I worked on, getting my degree and starting my career and all of that, which was not therapy. I was just working in real estate. Um, and then I realized, oh, if I want to have a partner, I better figure this thing out. Because I met my husband on a dating app and I was like, oh, I really like this guy, but I don't know what I'm doing and I don't want to screw this up. So I went to therapy and then I was like, oh, shoot, you can actually learn this. These are relationship skills. It's not like some woo woo magic that, like, when you get married or when you find love, the fairies fly around and like bless you with relationship skills. So actually, that was very comforting for me that I could actually just go and learn them. So I did. And then I kept going and decided to become a therapist myself.
That's phenomenal. Love it. I often talk about problems in relationships not being the actual relationship, but being the problem is the relationship that each individual has with themselves. What do you think of that concept?
Oh my gosh, it's so crucial. So yeah, and that's, I'm going to speak to my book a little bit because the first pillar of the relationship model is safety. And the first pillar of safety is self awareness, right? Because if you don't know what you're bringing into a relationship, like you said, you're going to try to either work it out through the relationship, um, or, you're just, it's the lack of self awareness can do a number on what you're trying to accomplish in a relationship, cause a lot of problems that, like you said, it's not about the the actual problem. It's about what this what the self is bringing to that.
You're speaking my language here, Crystal. Safety is so freaking important. I literally think that almost every argument on this planet or drinking or overindulging has to do with like we don't feel safe. It doesn't mean we come home and we're like, I don't feel safe, so I'm going to go get a 6 pack of beer. No, it's buried in our subconscious mind, right?
Oh my gosh, totally,
And
totally.
you mentioned the tribe, and I did too. Like it's back to the survival because if you piss off your parents, you might get kicked out of the tribe. And I think a lot of our issues are based around safety. So even when I have the tough conversations with Yvonne now, my girlfriend and partner, I'm telling myself, it's okay. Everything's going to be okay. And you're safe. I keep saying that. You're safe. You're safe. You're safe. Because that's when the fight or flight and the anxiety comes and you want to either yell, fight, or take off.
100%. Oh my gosh. So the name of my book is Strong, and it's an acronym of the 6 pillars of a healthy relationship. Because again, I just wanted to break it down, especially if my book is for men. One thing I've learned in working with men is like, sure, great, we can do the insight, but what are the practical skills and tools? Like, give me some kind of blueprint so I'm not just like lost in this process here. So I wanted to honor that, and I thought about again, like, what are the core tenets of a healthy relationship? And strong is healthy, and S for safety. That was another thing. And you said it so well, but I think this was something I started to notice as like the difference between what women prioritize in a relationship versus what men like prioritize in a relationship. Women, so this is like the insight from women, and I would love, check with your partner and all of that. As humans, our fundamental need is for safety. Like you said, the belonging of the tribe. I feel safe here. These are my people. I can mess up. I can make a mistake. And it's okay. And for women, just physically being, more vulnerable in the world, safety is kind of at the forefront of our minds all the time. And what I noticed is when I would talk to couples, is the men sometimes didn't even realize that, like how paramount safety was to a woman's sense of connection in a relationship. So that's also where I like to start with safety. And I break safety down to 4 different components. That first one is self-awareness, right? The second one is basic stability. And that's something, like you said, if your partner's coming home and pounding a 6-pack and you can't rely on them because, they're then hungover the next day, or, they're erratic and volatile, like that really does a number. It doesn't matter how much else good you do. If you're not stable and able to bring stability to a relationship, it can cause a lot of lack of safety, right? And then the last 2, which is that self-regulation and self-expression, being able to fight in a healthy way that doesn't go below the belt, that doesn't make your partner feel unsafe. So expressing yourself well. And then self-regulation. Like you said, if you had a bad day, you don't just come home and bring all that anger or that frustration into the home and start, pounding the beers, or I don't know, whatever it is that is bringing that dysregulation home is also what helps to contribute to the emotional safety the relationship.
So safety, and this goes 2 ways. It's not. I don't think it's a masculine and feminine thing. Like Yvonne provides a safe place for me to also open up and be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have that much in my life, so it is super interesting. It's super. It's so, I don't know what the word is. It's like freeing, I guess, is the best word. When you have a partner where you can pretty much say anything, like how you're feeling, and they, instead of judging and getting into fear and judgment, they hold space for you, and they try to respond in love rather than fear and ego.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Absolutely.
beautiful thing. So tell us more of the 5 tenets. So we got S for safety.
Safety. Mm-hmm.
What are the other 5?
T is for trust, which, obviously you have to have trust in a relationship. R is for respect, mutual respect. O is for openness, right? The fact that you're going to continue to grow as individuals, being able to have an open dialogue with your partner, communication. N is for nurturing. Again, nurturing the relationship is different than just maintaining, right? Checking boxes. And then G is generosity. And so all of these together, it really, again, I did a lot of research as I was writing this, and also then, combined with my clinical experience of like, the first 3 are really what help a relationship survive. So if you don't have safety, trust, and respect, you and your partner are just going to be in this constant level of crisis, right? Because like you said, you can't have conversations without it feeling like somebody's going to threaten divorce or threaten to leave, or you feel that lack of respect when you talk to each other, or, they make promises, but they don't keep them. And so you don't trust them. And so you become kind of hyper vigilant. All of that is where couples end up in crisis. right? And so I've seen a lot of couples, as my role as a couples counselor, in that state, right? And so that's where we're like, you got to get STR under your belt if your relationship is going to survive, right? These are the foundational. And then when you're in a good place, let's say you feel safe with each other, you trust each other, you respect each other, but your relationship is just maybe kind of hit a routine. It's starting to feel a little bit like co-parents, roommates, not like super exciting. That's where we then need to figure out, well, how can we make this relationship thrive? And then the ONG is really about thriving, right? So, how do we stay open about growth and have that growth mindset in the relationship? How do we nurture each other's new periods of growth and, continue to grow together rather than grow apart? And then G is the generosity, which is, basic human instinct is we want to win, right? And kind of bringing it back to what your girlfriend said, it's like the me versus the we is that fundamental shift when you finally take that generous approach of like, you know what? It is about the we.
Hey, I think this is awesome. I think that I struggled so much because I didn't feel safe. And it wasn't necessarily their fault. It was my underlying beliefs. They didn't help it for sure because they didn't create a safe place for me. But that's why.
Mhm.
Really, really interesting that
Yeah,
I ran from the we because it's like I can protect myself as an adult, but man, if I get into this we stuff, I've got to open up. And if I open up, then that's when things can go wrong.
totally. And I love that you brought that up because that's part of what I noticed that, with sometimes with pop psychology or you like Google something and you're like, what should I do? A lot of emphasis is on that kind of, well, you got to be better at the we. You got to focus on like being nicer to your partner, doing more for the relationship. But that doesn't make a difference when you don't have safety. And so that's why I like to say you got to start with the meat and potatoes, which is the safety, trust, and respect. And then you get to the dessert and the extras and the sides, and the stuff that then makes the meal, which is that generosity. But you don't get that without the safety.
Yeah, and you can't have safety if you don't have self-love and you've got these self-limiting beliefs that are holding you back, right? That was my story
Mm,
is yeah, I didn't feel enough. If you're listening to this and you're wondering if you have some of these old stories that are coming to your relationship, do yourself and your relationship a favor and go to unlocklimitlessyou.com/quiz. It only takes 3 minutes. It's only 12 questions and you'll learn your level of self-love. If you lack self-love, it's probably because you're bringing in this old stuff from the past. So I just had this interesting thought on the acronym STRONG. I didn't know you were going to say generosity with G. I was thinking it might be grateful. Strong to the power of two with generosity and gratefulness. Strong to the power of three, generosity, gratefulness, and growth.
love it. Yeah. I mean, so many awesome things, Yeah.
So, what advice do you have for people who are navigating these complexities of modern dating and relationships?
You know, I always like to emphasize that there's hope. It doesn't have to be like you don't have to be in a relationship that's not satisfying. And I don't mean that as like, oh, you should just leave. But there are skills and tools out there. Like you said, taking one small step of taking a quiz and starting to look into that self-awareness piece of, how much of this can I do to address my side of the equation? Because one of the things I say in my book and in my practice is you can't tell your partner what you need if you don't know what that is, right? And so often, like you said, you're feeling frustrated in relationship, you're not happy, you need something more from it, but you don't know what. Well, go figure out the what, right? So that you can go into the relationship and then you can ask your partner, right? This is what I need. I've learned this about myself. Because that's also then where it becomes a partner journey, right? And then that way you can see like, is this partner open to that? Do they want the best for me? Are they coming alongside me and saying, "Oh my gosh, I've been wanting you to figure out what it is I can help you with. Absolutely, I'm here for you." Or do they say, "Yikes, that sounds like a you problem. I'm out." Which again helps you determine like, is this a relationship that is going to be a partnership, or am I simply being like used for my production value here? Which is something
Yeah.
I hear with men a lot.
It is so important to figure out your side of the equation. It was my whole life, it was her problem and she's doing this, this, and this. But I promise you, if you're listening to this and you're blaming the other person, there's no way you don't have a role to play in it, even if the role was the person that you selected, because there's a reason you selected that person based on that old stuff from decades ago. So the beautiful thing is, though, as you know, Kristal, is that the intimate relationship is literally the best place in the world to heal old pain.
A safe, intimate
A safe
relationship.
one, yes, yes,
Yes.
yes. If you have two people who are willing to work together. So when you said it earlier, a couple
Mhm.
minutes ago, do the work, and then the person says, "Oh, this is what I can help you with." That's the type of relationship. Yeah.
Mhm.
And when you
100%.
when you get that person and you get two people, oh my gosh, it just becomes a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
How do you see technology in this crazy world of social media that we live in? How do you see that impacting intimacy and connection in relationships today?
It can do two things, right? Because it really is just a tool. But what I'm seeing is a lot of people are using it. So, social media was originally created to bring people together, and keep people interested in each other's lives. Unfortunately, it's become kind of the opposite, right? It's driving disconnection and competition and people feeling worse about themselves. And I see the same pattern in relationships, right? Is that the phone and social media becomes an obstacle to connection rather than a facilitator of connection. And so that's something, I don't want to say it's good or bad as far as the neutral tool, because you can use it to find events. You can use it to, keep in touch when you're far away. You can use it to, find podcasts and find information on how to improve your relationship. Or it can become just a little distraction, a doom scroll, a, way to be in physical proximity with your partner, but emotionally 1,000 miles away. And that's the part that I really caution people against letting technology, yeah, have that much of
So,
it.
so what are they doing? What's the answer there?
The answer is be honest with yourself about your media use, be intentional about your media use. And if it's getting in the way of your presence and your connection, figure out a way to put boundaries on it.
Yeah, the old adage of treat people like you'd want to be treated. Just think if you're having a conversation, an important conversation, and you want to tell someone something that means a lot to you, and that person is looking down, typing on their phone. How would you feel? Not good. There's not a soul in this world that'd be like, "Oh, it'd be great. I'd love that." Right? you
Yeah.
you want that connection. You want that presence. So just
Mhm.
just make sure that you're not that person.
And that's something I really want to emphasize that, for a lot of people, and maybe it's the way our society is also going, is like there's this emphasis on doing, 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 right? So checking emails, being busy, learning, optimizing, production. But the thing that you cannot replace in a relationship, especially an intimate relationship, is your presence, right? You can do all the things, you can bring all the things to the table, but ultimately, again, if it's a healthy relationship, really what your partner wants is you, right? They want you and they want your presence. And so making sure that you are honoring that, right? Like you said, oh no, wait, just quick. I saw this thing that's going to be interesting. Cool. And your partner probably just wants to be present with you and connect with you for a minute.
Yeah. So we've talked couple times so far about these personal traumas from childhood, and people cannot not bring those into the relationship. So what are some effective ways that you help people address their past traumas to foster healthier relationships and connections?
Um, So first of all, if you've experienced any kind of traumatic event, for any of your listeners, there is hope. There are a lot of resources out there. I personally do use EMDR therapy for veterans and first responders, and then also for complex trauma. So again, it does not have to define you at all. So if you're wondering like, oh gosh, I've, experienced this, does it mean I'm never going to have a happy relationship or I'm always going to be this way? It doesn't have to, right? So there is healing out there, because the big thing that trauma does is it sends the message that the world and other people are unsafe and unreliable, right? And so it turns your brain from being in connection mode to being in protection mode. And so that's often where it's like people with trauma, they want connection, but because of past experiences, they're unable to receive it, or it becomes too much. And so they pull away, or, and so this kind of pattern of I want, but I can't, and the push pull of I want to connect, but I feel, need to protect myself, is frustrating to the people, like obviously that want to connect with you, but also it's exhausting to yourself. So just give yourself permission to go get help and hope, because when you can rewire your brain through a trauma therapy, effective trauma therapy, you can kind of untangle some of those wires that got tangled up, that other people are dangerous or the world is dangerous. And you can then kind of start to learn who you can trust, how you can trust, and how you can be safe again to receive love.
Yeah. So it's a story we tell ourselves, right? It's a story that we tell ourselves to protect ourselves. If I do this, this will happen. So I got to do this to protect myself. I've had two conversations, Kristal, in the last week. One was with the vet, and one was with a good friend's mom. The vet was telling me how her only relationship she have is with animals,
Right.
and my friend's mom was telling me that she's like, yeah, I'm not going to go there again.
Mm-hmm.
Because neither of them wanted to get hurt. So I asked the vet, I was like, what was your childhood like? She was like, oh, my dad was a hard charging like general or something. And when I hear that, I'm like, whoa. So the thing about trauma that you said, I just want to make sure people understand. Trauma doesn't mean you had to be locked in a cage or beat, right? Trauma could be anything that made impacted you in a stressful way that you kept thinking about. But anyway, going back to the story for them was, if I open my heart like I did when I was a child, bad things are going to happen. And I told both of them, it's just an untruth. And once you can show your brain that it's an untruth, you literally can reprogram those neural pathways, and then the negative behavior, the thinking. I mean, because these ladies, they want connection, despite what they're telling me. I'm like, I was almost trying to convince the vet. I was like, no, we're here for connection. She's like, no, but I'm connected with these dogs. And I'm like, okay. So anyway, it's that story we all tell ourselves, right?
It is a story, and our brains are made to protect us, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's something also to honor, is that your brain is doing a really good job of keeping you where it knows it can keep you safe,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so I think that's something else. It's not necessarily saying like, well, that's, I mean, sometimes it's like, yes, the stories we tell ourselves are, limiting and self-defeating, and they are, but honoring sometimes the why, right? It's because I tried that, I tried it, and it didn't work. I didn't know how to do it, and I got terribly hurt. And my brain is like, yeah, until we know how to do that, let's not. And that's where a lot of people stop. They're like, well, I don't know how, so I'm just not. And that's the piece of like, well, if you do maybe want it at some point on some little tiny level, don't you at least want to know that you could if you wanted to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I didn't. I left that part of the story out, but I always make sure it's not your fault, because you're so right. Their brains are protecting them from
Mm.
something that they think is worse. So they're over here. They're like, I go home every night alone, and it's not great, but it's certainly better than being over here.
Oh my
So their
gosh.
their brains keeping them. Your subconscious mind has you exactly where it wants you,
Yes.
but with the power of the work that you do and that I do, we can tell that subconscious brain another story. We can say, you know what? That was the story when I was 6, 7, 8, 20, whatever. But it doesn't have to be the story today.
Hmm. Hmm. Or for the future, right? Because we can learn new skills, we can get better resources,
Yeah.
we can learn resilience, right?
So as we close, Kristal, tell us kind of like, who do you work with? What do you do? Do you work mostly with couples? Are you working with the individuals? And how can people reach you? And
Yeah.
how do you help them?
So right now in Austin, Texas, I mostly see couples. I do sex therapy as well. I do couples therapy, and then for the individuals, like I said, I have a real passion for working with veterans and first responders, because it's such a unique population, and I just love them. And so I work with a nonprofit to provide trauma therapy for that population specifically. So individuals through that. And then, of course, I just end up seeing individuals, as part of my caseload as well. But yeah, so if you're in Austin or in Texas and would like to work with me, you can find me at ATX Therapist on Instagram. And then if you're not in Texas, or you want to, if you don't necessarily are not able to work with me in person, you can get my book on Amazon. It is Strong, a relationship field guide for the modern man. It's also on Audible. And then I have a website. It's strong.love. And there's just, blog posts and all kinds of stuff on there.
What an awesome website. So you're not able to work with people outside of Texas on like remotely?
Not yet. That's going to be my 2025 goal, is putting more courses up there for people to reach me anywhere.
Awesome. Is there anything I forgot to ask you that you think would be amazing for the audience to know?
I think just coming back to the goal of your podcast is, allow yourself the experience of being happier by working on your relationships, because relationships determine the quality of your life, right? And so having the happiest life will include having the healthiest relationships. So yeah, just kind of bringing it back to that.
Love it. Great stuff. Kristal, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This concludes another episode of How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. Remember, I'm on a mission to help 1 million people radically transform their lives by getting rid of the self-limiting beliefs that are hidden in the subconscious mind. So if you like this content, please do me a favor, rate it, review it, share it, whatever you can do to get the word out. I'd greatly appreciate it. And until next time, love heals all.
Hit subscribe if you don't want to miss out on more life-changing content. And if you're struggling, you don't have to. Go to bradchandler.com/contact. There, you can join the Facebook community of like-minded entrepreneurs, and you'll see a button to schedule your freedom and happiness call. See you on the next episode.